input data. AI is not going to give you data. You have to input data. Now, fortunately, is it working? Okay. Can we close the lights so that this is a little brighter? This light is needed. Everybody can see this comfortably? Last row? Good, thanks. So who gets to enter the data? Data entry will happen through human effort. That's the coaches. Okay. Currently, where do you enter your data? Currently, where do you enter your data? आप डेटा कहाँ एंटर करते हैं अभी? एक्सेल। तो डेटा जब एक्सेल में करते हैं एंटर, तो do you know how to work around with that data? So let us just walk past with a manual to AI interface on data. Okay. So what all would we be covering today? So we'll talk about taking manual data entry, that is notebooks, converting it into digital insights. We'll talk about how do we do this and what would it do, and understand what kind of data we can create into a framework, and basics of artificial intelligence and how is it built. So the entire automation system. Okay. So looking at this, can anybody tell me how many of you think of this to be your definition of AI? You can just raise your hands and tell me. जब हम AI in performance sports बोलते हैं, is this what you mean? Yes. You can raise your hands and tell me. जब आप बोलते हैं कि हमको AI चाहिए परफॉर्मेंस इंप्रूव करने के लिए, is this what you mean? Raise of hands. AI in sports का definition ये है, अगर है तो we can talk about how to reach there today. If it is not your definition and it is purely about data and what you read out of the data, then that is also a journey that we'll cover today. Depends on what you are looking at. Is my question clear?
Sir, in case data is galat gaya, so it shows wrong only.
So this does not involve data. My question is, when I talk about AI in sports, जब मैं बोलता हूँ AI in sports, the first picture that comes to your mind, is it this?
Yes.
Okay. If it is this, it essentially means this is your definition of where you want data to be, or how do you want data to be calculated, assessed, analyzed. So I'll help you cover the gap between the two. Okay. No, this went terribly wrong. So what do we understand by a data framework? In a sense, how do we calculate data? How do we segregate it? How do we put it together? And how do we make it make sense to us? Okay. So any kind of data that you enter into notebooks or Excel. So in my understanding, there are very few people who actually carry their laptops into the ground. You would mostly carry only your notebooks or note it down on your phone and then bring it. So if we understand how we collect data, then we can move forward from here. Now, when we talk about different metrics, we need to come across one system that actually puts things together. Okay. So is this how an average notebook looks like for a coach? And if you look at that, then this is your primary data entry point. Okay, this is where you start entering data in terms of whatever you are trying to measure. You might be measuring different kinds of data for athlete at different scales or different times of this exercise. Okay. And in case you are worried about the presentation, instead of taking photos and screenshots, I'll send the presentation to Shraddha ma'am. She can circulate it amongst everyone, so you'll get an original. Don't worry about the screenshots, because the screenshots lie in our gallery and we never look at them again. So, yeah. So what we try to do is, this abstract data that you keep entering, first is understanding that this is where we are entering data. Second, we will clean this data to get rid of any of the inaccuracies, otherwise that will go into AI and it will flow that together. So it's like petrol tanki mein kachra gaya, to kachra engine mein bhi jayega. Okay, so we'll clean data. After cleaning the data, we'll try to understand how do we visualize it and how do we interpret that data. Okay, visualization and interpretation are two very different things. So we'll cover both. So, okay. Okay, so we'll take up a sample format in which we can enter data. So you'd enter the date, your athlete name, performance metric and notes. So this is pretty generic. You can change it according to how you want. So each field or each sector, depending on how you want to change your data set, it could be within your sheet, you have made sub sheets for each athlete, each day, however you'd want to do it. Now, we'll go about with cleaning data. When I say cleaning, it essentially means getting rid of errors. So a lot of times when you copy paste data from one system to the other, you'd have blank fields, you'll have other redundancies. So the name could be Abhishek, but the way we pronounce it or the way we write it or spell it, it could go into something else. So once we clean data, blank cells, date formats, currency formats, metrics, so all of those, once we set them right, our data is ready for processing. So this is just a sample data set. These are all the athletes. This is their endurance score. This is strength score. How many hours of training have they done in a week? So that's the sample data set that we've taken. Is everything clear till now? Anybody has any questions, doubts? Anyone? Okay. Now, we'll look at visualization as the next step after this. Why do we want to visualize? What is data visualization? Any ideas? What is data visualization? Can anybody tell me? Koi bhi? Okay, so data visualization is as simple as graphs and charts. That is what I mean by visualization. Does not mean you create a painting out of data. You can do that, but that's not what I mean. So, why are we trying to visualize data? Because it tells us a very different story. So, a long list of points are given. I'm not going to cover all of them by speaking. When you get the presentation, you can read them. Essentially, it helps you understand data very well. And just by looking at how the chart gets made after you input data, you'll be able to come up with tons of conclusions without having to enter into what has happened. Okay. Just by looking at data, you'd be able to make out which athlete has done well, which athlete has not done well, how did we calculate this, and believe me, it happens automatically. You really don't need to get into it. So after entering our sample data, this is the scatter graph that we get. Okay. The formulas are given here, but I did not enter those formulas. What I did was, I opened up Excel, I put up the data, and I said create a scatter graph. So when I just click on that option, this is the graph that it creates. These calculations have been done by the system itself. I really did not put my head into it. So when we do this, it tells me my endurance score, my strength score, and it also gives me an understanding of which athlete is doing well. Now this is a simple scatter graph. If I go to a bubble graph, I do the same thing. So I copy paste the data and I only say change the graph type from scatter to a bubble graph. And just by that, it gives me this. So the data is the same. There's no change in data, but there is a different kind of insight which both the graphs give. Okay. And if we analyze it, what is the overall trend? So the moment you interpret this data, you get an understanding that an athlete, so there is a negative correlation between endurance and strength. When I say negative correlation, it means the person who's running faster also does more push-ups. You can validate it with getting the person's exercise done on ground. For me, it's a data set. I did not validate it. This is the data that has come to me. So athlete performance, the moment I enter and look at it through a graph, I can tell which athlete has done well overall and why. Okay. So you would be able to see that athlete G excels in both, while athlete F lags in both. So there is a consistency. Okay. This you can easily see when you look at the graphs. So my interpretation is looking at the graph. I don't know the athlete, I do not know his performance, but this is what my data tells me. Now, when you look at the top performer and you look at what they are doing, you get to understand that the highest training volume is maintained by this athlete. You can correlate it with a reason from your exercise science, the kind of periodization that the athlete is going through. You can do all of that. And the moment you correlate it, you would understand that more training time allows greater development across multiple domains. Okay. Similarly, the underperforming athlete, when you say that he has the slowest run time and lowest strength, it also correlates to his lower training hours per week. And this tells us that limited training time or lesser training time has resulted in lower efficiency of the athlete. Okay. You as coach might know on today or in general, where is my athlete, how does he perform? But the moment you start looking at data and taking it over a period of time, automatically it changes the way you might want to change your training based on data. So purely based on data, where is it headed? You can also enter data which you might want to test out. So if you say, this is how everybody is performing, if I change my athlete's training time, so from instead of 10 hours a week to if I change it to 15 hours a week, what is the kind of difference? The system would be able to tell you, and then you can match up and see whether it is reaching to that performance or not. So that is how easy data would make it. Now, you would also observe that the entire set has got an entire cluster in between. So this is the highest and this is the lowest in both cases. And this entire clustering is what we are talking about just now. So this is the clustering B, C, E and H and I. They are grouped together with endurance scores. So typically how a bell curve is, I'm sure you would have seen a bell curve. Have you referred to it of late?
Yes.
So you have some athletes who perform very well, some athletes who perform not so well, and then you have the average in between. So the moment you look at it, this is your clustering. So they are consistent in their training, but not exceptional. Okay. And then you look at these three who are balanced performers. So what they are doing is, they get stronger regimes and they balance out the entire bell curve to make it more average, more performance oriented. So you need to have a few people within the team which push your performance ahead, and these are those people. Now, looking at it, why do these patterns really matter to us? Because of the negative correlation. Now, you establish a negative correlation because you're looking at data. If you do not look at data, with your intuition, you will never be able to understand what it is doing. How is data performing? How is the calculation going? So it is essential for you to visualize and understand where it is going. What is actually affecting their performance? So the moment you say it is training hours and not, so you could add nutrition to this, you could add recovery to this, you could add different parameters and see overall how it is changing. So you currently look at just the training hours and you look at training volume as one of the key factors of athletic performance for this data set. And then you understand that athlete G and athlete F are the outliers. So one is the top, one is the bottom. So they are the people who actually tell you where this data set is going with its performance. That is, in a sense, what the entire exercise does to you. And to do this exercise, it will take you hardly 5 to 7 minutes. Nothing more. Now, continuing, the moment you start boosting training for lower performers, you will say that, okay, I'll increase the number of training hours. The moment you increase the training hours, you'll start seeing a jump in their performance. That comes through data analysis. Then you start looking at top performers and you start showing their scores and use their scores. So you start boosting the lower end and benchmarking the score on top. So the moment you benchmark scores from the top of the order, automatically your performance starts rising up. And you start fine-tuning your middle group with the same leverage. And at the same time, since your scatter graph shows diversity in athlete profiles, you can group athletes by similar patterns. So high endurance patterns can be grouped together, low strengths could be grouped together, and then you can tailor your drills, exercise, whatever you'd want to do. So it becomes a lot easier. Since I was mentioning looking at data, so one of the primary features is when you can do storytelling out of data itself. So this is your athlete G's data. And the way you actually tell the story is it stands out of the scatter graph. He runs the fastest 2 mile and gets the most push-ups, training these many hours a week. So it actually is able to tell you that based on data, this is the performance that we have received. And for coaches, it would be prudent if you can identify your G athletes and use their discipline to motivate and maintain other people's performance. So similarly, you look at the struggle of the lower end of the athlete cycle. So that's athlete A. So you start looking at which athlete to target and move forward, and how do we take them on. Now, as I mentioned about AI, everything that you take in your notebook, you can give it to AI to convert into patterns, if you want. You can even take your scatter graph and give it, and AI would be able to detect patterns and parameters. Now we had a lot of understanding of where AI is and what AI does. So, okay, let's go down with a personal story. So I started off with my archery, and at that stage when I started archery, I was an engineer. I'd cleared my engineering. I'd never done archery before that. I learned archery by myself, never had a coach in my life. Even when I got into the Indian team, I never had a coach. So that's how it went. Self-learned, self-taught, and people would use a lot of my form to tell their archers what to do. I never got the logic, but that's how the system works here. So I understood AI from a very different lens, and I realized we have the potential to hit things out of the park when it comes to AI. So the function of AI, artificial intelligence, is you would have noticed my 2-year-old sleeping over here. I'm very fascinated by him because from everything that I've learned about AI, when we learn about neural networks, we learn about learning patterns, learning behaviors, is something that I get to see in him. So as a kid, when I was studying my AI and robotics course, you would talk about the mechanical arm, something the way you refer it to as JCB or digger or bulldozers today. So it is for the arm to understand, what it is going to do, what it is going to pick. Accordingly, the amount of power that needs to be transferred to it, from where it needs to pick up, transfer and drop it. So when my kid was small, I would see him look at a ball, look at the ball and look at his hand, take it to the ball, grasp it, feel it, lift it, take it to the other place and drop it. In my lifetime, I never thought that there could be a physical manifestation of robotic principles. And this is probably where robotics actually got inspired from humans. Artificial intelligence is what you teach the system to do. You are telling it what to do, what not to do. The gentleman in the session prior to lunch was talking about prompts. How you give the prompt, what does it mean and what it doesn't mean. The large language models that exist today, do you know how ChatGPT works? You have any ideas? Anybody? Let's make it into an interesting session, no? ऐसे में तो सबको नींद आ जाएगी. आधे लोग तो वैसे ही सो रहे हैं.
We ask some questions and GPT tries to answer, then we interact with it. It keeps learning from the data that we input.
Sure. So the name itself is large language model. Okay. Why is it called a large language model? Is because it is based on language. Okay. How does it create sentences? How does it generate? It generates it based on the probability of what the next word should be. Do you know that? So if you don't know that, then you need to just do a little deep dive. It will help you understand how ChatGPT works. ChatGPT, in its initial avatar 2 years back, when it came out, if you asked it for sources, and a lot of people tried doing their research papers on it, okay, it is very capable to generate the entire link fake. So if you click on that link, it does not go anywhere. It will give you YouTube links also which do not work. That is because it is generating that for you. That link really does not exist. You have asked it to generate, so it is generating and giving. Those things never existed. If you ask it for data, it will clearly tell you, okay, this is a problem. So it will give you data. If you ask it to verify, it will say, okay, verifiable data I cannot find. I cannot access the internet in real time. So most of your stuff with AI, that is where the problem is, because you are looking at it doing something, you're looking at it replacing you, and it's not built to replace you. That is where ChatGPT is today. And everybody talking about AGI, that's Advanced General Intelligence. We are a couple of years away from it, easily. So let's talk broadly about artificial intelligence. So taking from the same data set, if you log your stats and your data is cleaned, AI will find patterns automatically. That is what it can do for you. So if you give it your data and you say, okay, I'm giving you this data set. And with this data set, so I've got 10 athletes. This is how many times they exercise in the week. This is how much they ran. This is the run time. This is the exercise. And this is how many times, how many hours a week have they trained. Give me your understanding and your insights. It will be able to do it. But you need to input the data and you need to put in the right prompt. If you don't tell it what to calculate, it will not be able to. Okay? So let's move forward. Like I started speaking about ChatGPT. So it is trained on a huge amount of text data, not statistics. It knows what is mean, median, mode. It understands correlation, regression. Okay? But that is not what it's trained on. It is trained on text data. Everybody understand what I'm saying? It is not trained to read graphs. It might make sense of it in an OCR today, but it is not trained for it. If you give it, it will give you erroneous results. That is what will happen. So it will answer a lot of your questions. It will be able to write reports, analyze notes. So you can, after giving the data set, you can ask, why is my athlete slow? What do I make changes in the training regime to make him faster? How does an athlete achieve peak performance? It will be able to give replies to it, probably add logic to it also. But can it create something? Is it physically working or not? That you will have to test it. There is no way that AI can do all of it by itself. You could give training logs for 1 year or 6 months or even a week. It will be able to give you tips based on your data. That is what it could do for you. So that is large language model, LLM. Has anybody heard of SLM?
Yes.
Okay. What does it do? We'll come to that as the next point, but tell me your understanding.
For research data analyzing software, it is.
Okay. So let's say SLM is small language model. So that was large language model. This is a small language model. What it does is it takes a very small amount of data. It does not need to be online. Okay. Large language models typically train on huge amounts of data. They work only based on cloud. SLM is more specific. So I can have large language model built out for the entire sports industry. But my SLM could be sport specific. It could be fencing, it could be boxing, it could be archery, it could be javelin, whichever we want it to be. So that is SLM. You could train it on very targeted data. So if you have a small language model, you can create and build a small language model only to analyze your Excel sheets. So a lot of you said you enter your data in Excel sheets. Yes? Yes. So when you enter your data in Excel sheets, your small language model could work only locally on your Excel sheets. And it could analyze and come out with patterns, ranking athletes, giving you trends, giving you red flags much before they come in. So typically if you give it a significant amount of data and you tell it, okay, these athletes were injured in the past 5 years, it will be able to notice similar patterns and be able to tell you if any athlete is closer to injury. Now, you all understand that injuries are of two types. One is sustained injury and one is trauma that you get immediately during performance. So I'm not talking about the accidental trauma or injury. I'm talking about the sustained overuse of muscle, less recovery, those kind of injury. So those are SLM would be able to tell you, even an LLM can tell you. But an LLM is an overkill for a problem that an SLM can solve. So you could run your entire SLM out of your own laptop and check team's performance, give you intelligence, inputs, everything. So, like I said, you can have a mini AI that can read the charts and tells you which athlete currently needs work, which athlete is working, not working, is he ready for a championship or not. You can benchmark your scores and ask it all. Now, has anybody heard of AI agents? Agentic AI? Okay. So if you look at currently where the world is headed, do you understand workflows? Workflows, process flows in data terms? Okay. So a workflow would be probably, so everybody has attended sports competitions, right? So from the time the announcement comes through for a competition, the registration for the competition, going through the competition, so complete conduction of the competition, and exit. So from arrival of team to departure of teams, and then the certificate coming to you could be one complete flow by itself. So this is a larger flow. Then in between you'll have smaller flows. So you'd have events where you can have qualification, ke liye one workflow. You can have knockouts, one workflow. All of those. When you automate these workflows is where you can create AI agents. Okay. So AI agents are essentially workflows. And when you talk about these workflows, there could be a trigger which could be set. So if X number of athletes have come into the arena, we need to order water. Simple statement. So if your athlete number crosses 100, your AI agent will automatically create a requisite for ordering more water. And this comes back. You don't really need to worry. It'll take the water into inventory and inform you that water is arrived. That is how much automation an agent can do. So when you combine these three, it makes it very powerful. So you can have your data with your rules, and like you said, assistant, AI could be an assistant. This is the assistant, automated. Otherwise, currently you all struggle with entering proper prompts, copy pasting from ChatGPT, then formatting it, then trying to change some things that the professors do not notice, right? AI agent can do it more effectively than you. So that's probably a good use case. So the example is interesting. So the AI which notices athletes' data and schedules extra rest to avoid injury. So if this can be done in real time and the change schedule can be communicated directly to the athlete, it will complete the entire flow. Okay. Now this is how you visualize data flow. So this is you. This is the coach. Your SLM and LLM receive data input from the coach. They, along with the agent, process whatever is needed to be done, and they deliver it to intelligence. So your intelligence platform could just be a dashboard. Your intelligence platform could be something that you receive reports from. Okay. So different athlete management systems have got different kinds of reporting systems. So when you look at any of those, so that is what intelligence gathering does. And this pushes on the intelligence to the coach. So now after the coach has entered data, it is able to receive intelligence. Okay. Now how do you build a system like this? So you take data input, you do SLM, agentic AI takes decisions, and LLM generates communication. So you could enter a lot of data. The agentic AI takes decisions. So adjust training in real time. If you have a system, so I think I met somebody outside who spoke about athlete data and dashboards with them, sharing the data with their parents and teachers. So if you take a system like that, now when you enter data, the system is able to calculate where the athlete is, make changes automatically based on the triggers that you have specified and given, and then communicates this again as an adjusted schedule back to the athlete. So if you can do that, it changes everything that you're trying to do because it improves your efficiency. So he said about being able to do more work, and I said lazy. Okay, so AI does not make you lazy. AI can boost your productivity multiple times. So instead of looking and worrying about mundane tasks that you're spending a lot of your time doing, you could hand it over to AI. AI will do the rest. You can focus on more critical human-centric tasks. That is where the world is headed. So AI will never have the eye that you do. It'll never have the intuition. It'll never be able to calculate the million different things that you can. So your attention will gradually go towards what the humans are supposed to do and leave the more boring, more tedious tasks to AI. And it will be able to calculate all of those. So you can have communications become better. You can also add a lot of context. So you can have your program goals. So your annual goal could be, okay, my athlete's run time in athletics in a 100-meter sprint has to increase by 3 seconds at the end of the year. It will be able to come out, break down the entire schedule, be able to automate what periodization should be done, how much load should be put, what should be the recovery time, what should be the hydration. It will calculate all of that and communicate directly to the athlete. So it will make you much more efficient along with a given context, and each time that you enter data, it can recalibrate and fine tune everything that you're doing. So that is where it is. Now this I had done for boxing. So anybody from boxing? I met Nitin down, but yeah, 3-4 people, right? So nowadays, I think you also start getting gloves with sensors,
Yes.
right? So if you get gloves with sensors, so everybody understands what is IoT, Internet of Things, wearable devices, rings, watches, bands. Now you get different kinds of biosensors, right, for biofeedback. So if you combine all of those, they become your wearables. So wearables can track the heart rate and punch force from the gloves directly. Your SLM can understand fatigue and technique issues. Your agentic AI can take a lot of decisions and modify the next session. So while the athlete is still training, still sparring, the entire system can calibrate and put the entire thing up for the approval of the coach while he's still training. And if the coach approves, then the LLM can create the entire summary and athlete recovery advice and share it. So this can happen in real time without you having to wait for the entire duration. So it will essentially, the data input that is there, it does not come from a manual intervention. It can be automated. If you want, it can be manual. If you want, it can be automated. You can calibrate your sensor data to be directly plugged into the system. It does the calculation and gives you the result. So you get the data input from here. The SLM analysis is for specifically that one sport. What is the kind of injury? And the SLM could specialize in that sport itself. So that could be done. Your agentic AI looks at the data and the context and it automatically adjusts your training plan, and then LLM produces reports and feedback and then communicates it. Yeah. So this is about it from my end. About this, I can take questions and we can have a discussion where probably you'd have something to ask. Yes, ma'am.
So when you talk about agents, are they another?
He'll give you the mic.
When you talk about agents, are they another tools like ChatGPT, or is this like a bot that you can just place if when you put in data?
There are currently 3 different systems that have come up. So yes, they are bots, but they're not self-contained programs. They're a part of a larger ecosystem. So agents can be trained based on the workflows that you have and the requirement from those workflows.
So this can be customized based on your requirements.
Yes, absolutely. And these agents are currently available on Azure and other platforms which can be programmed according to your needs. So you don't need to code it from the get-go. You already have different kinds of agents available. So currently the world is moving towards, if you're hearing a lot of job cuts, that is because there are a lot of processes which are getting put in place. So if there is a person whose job is only to sort out different kinds of things, so now computer vision comes in. So the first video that I showed you, that's computer vision. So the camera is looking at you, understanding which are your joints, mapping your body according to joints, and then calculating your movement. Now all of this is currently available as an open source platform. So you don't really need to do a lot of work.
Thank you.
Yes, Siddesh. You're audible to me. I don't know about the camera feed. They might require you to get on mic.
So, yeah. How ethical is it when it comes to challenges like data accuracy, the privacy, when we are talking about AI in sports? Because that is definitely going to consider the data which we are going to feed to the SLM or the LLM with regards to the athletes.
So, could you define ethical for me? I mean, what exactly do you mean?
I would suggest the data privacy, the data, I mean, whatever data we are uploading in the SLM, maybe, for that matter, the athletes' data, how secure the data will be, and how sure are we that the data won't be leaked or misused.
So, it is very rare for the data to get communicated by itself, the entire data set, to go on to a server. That usually does not happen as of now. It calculates most of your stuff over there in the browser itself, sends minimal amount of data as a token, fetches the token as a result, and gives you the reply. So that is where currently it works. But that being said, first of all, please sit. So first of all, we should be clear on what data we are collecting in the first place and how personal do we want it. Okay. Okay. Might sound a little different, but okay, I'll talk about it. So me being an athlete itself, being an elite athlete, the world becomes very different. Okay. The emphasis that we lay on to different stages of athlete development change according to what is required from the athlete. After a certain stage, we all know that the physical skill set that top athletes get into, the physical skill set is the same. When you take the national top 10, top 15, the skill set would be the same. There is no archer that I'm aware of who cannot shoot a bullseye at will within the top 10. You tell them isko beech mein marna hai, they'll be able to shoot it. Okay. Physical set wise, skill wise, there is no problem. Problem and challenges happen here. Within that framework, that setting, if you shot a tie at national gold medal, the two people who are standing over there both get one arrow each to shoot in the center. In that pressure of whether it will be a gold or a silver, are you able to shoot into the center or not without taking pressure is what changes it. A lot of this can be captured in data terms. Okay. So initially where we require the athlete to understand more of physical exercise or tune in specific muscle groups to be able to reach to a particular level of performance. Till then, we take in a lot of exercise into consideration, and that is the data you would train in. Okay. At a later stage, at especially the elite level, the requirement of the athlete changes from just winning the competition. If I'm in the Indian camp and so take me for example, I never had to worry about anybody reaching even close to my score. I was shooting pretty high. I did not really worry about who will come close to me. I just had to go out there and shoot. So for me, my training was not to better myself. It was more about, okay, can I write my name's initial letter on the target with 12 arrows? So that would be the kind of fun that I would get. And my coach, the national team coach, will come out and say, "Tu kya kar raha hai?" And we like, "Sir, bore ho raha tha, kuch nahi, naam likh raha hu target pe." Without realizing that to write an S, you actually need to be pretty accurate to place the arrows where they go. So that's me having fun. That is what elite athletes would do. How related this is to what you asked. The kind of data set that you will collect from a beginning athlete will change relatively compared to what an elite athlete would contribute to. Second, for a junior athlete, it is okay to have a schedule which requires him to train more, not overtrain, training about to the optimal level. But coach's requirements and coach's assessment of where the athlete is always he could do better, because we want to push the athlete. That data collection changes when it comes to elite athletes, because now elite athletes know this is where I am. I don't need to work too hard. Next competition is in 6 months. I can chill a little. He spends more time away from the field than he is on field. If you collect that data, and that data starts reflecting into his behavioral changes that you are inputting into AI, then that is not something that should be counted in. Also, what are the kind of data that you are collecting through your variables? Are you also collecting the data of what time he wakes up, what time he goes off to sleep? Are you also collecting data while he sleeps? All of those are not something that should be taken up. Okay. Whether the data would go to a server outside, difference. Should we be collecting it? Should we be analyzing it? That is something to be considered even more. So that. Second, we always say, since we are pretty much everybody is an academic here, we all say that a professor is biased towards one athlete, or a coach is biased, or the professor is biased towards one student. So let's talk one sentence about bias. Your system is prone to having a bias based on the data that it is trained on. So if you have ever tried to generate an image earlier, not the Ghibli style images that have come now. Earlier, if you generated an image and said an Indian classroom, it would show a poor dark guy with dhoti sitting in a poor village school which is very dilapidated. That is bias. That is bias in training data. If this is your definition of India and Indian, then the system does not know. System will only generate the image that it understands. So how much of data bias do you want to introduce? If you keep saying that this is the athlete, this is the data, this is the athlete, this is the data, it will understand that this athlete essentially performs this way. Okay. If your star athlete, if you say this is my best athlete and this is his data, and the data has flaws, then it will benchmark that as the top athlete and benchmark everybody else below. That is creating a bias, and that becomes a challenge, and that is non-ethical. Does that answer? Anyone? Thank you. हो गया? Oh, good.